Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We're going to be talking about NXT in your house from July the 4th, 2022. A solid show from front to back. Nothing terrible, nothing awful. Booking decisions seemed to make a lot of sense. Some matches were better than others. And we're going to get into the show thusly. But first, let's talk about the lack of in your house nostalgia. We did get Todd and Pettengill to do the cold open, so that was good. Big thumbs up. But I thought we was gonna get the house set like we got last year with the door and everything. We didn't get that this year. That sucks. I mean, why not do the in your house set? I think it would have been very fun and would have added a lot to the show to have an actual in your house set. I was kind of disappointed with that, but considering I didn't actually trip on it until much later in the show, it was okay. Like, it's not like at the beginning of the show I noticed it and then was like, oh, for the rest of the evening. I was actually halfway through the show when I realized, like, wait a minute, this comes across like a supersized episode of NXT when it could have been something a lot more in terms of the set could have been better, but whatever. First match, Legado del Fantasma are now the property of Tony D'Angelo and the family. So good match, really fun contest. The crowd was very, very hot for Legado del Fantasma. In fact, since Legado del Fantasma has teased that babyface turn, it's been just nothing but cooking with grease. Anytime they were on offense, the crowd was just melting. It was awesome, fantastic. The finish saw some confusion, because Elektra Lopez alerted the referee of the crowbar for Tony D'Angelo, which was usually tucked behind the stairs. So the referee found it and retrieved it, and everybody was like, yeah, it's going to be a fair fight. And it was like, no, it really wasn't. So the Legado del Fantasma decided they was going to cheat. And Elektra Lopez, fine ass, slid Escobar to brass knuckles. Meanwhile, I think it was Two Dimes, pulled the crowbar from under the ring. They had tucked another one under the ring. He handed it to Tony D. Tony D takes a swing with the crowbar and misses. Then, he ends up bumps into Escobar. Escobar drops the brass knuckles. The brass knuckles are scooped up, punched Joaquin Wilde in the head. Then, I think Stacks got hit in the head with the crowbar. Two Dimes pushed Stacks over on top of Joaquin Wilde, and the pinfall actually is scored. And that is how the match ends. The selling of Santos Escobar when his team lost, the bug-eyed glare, was absolutely, it was really good. On a Twitter exclusive, Tony D'Angelo basically says that they're going to be butlers. That's essentially what's the role of the Legado del Fantasma. They're going to be the help. So they're going to be, quote unquote, members of the family, but they're just kind of going to be the help. And they can't say that they're going to be butlers or something like that because, 3 white guys with Hispanic butlers is not necessarily going to go over very well in terms of political correctness. Let's put it that way. I was actually not surprised with this finish. I thought Legado del Fantasma would win, but I should have known better. Tony D'Angelo is actually being pushed right now, and he's being built up for what? I don't know. Is he being built up to be a challenger to Braun? Hopefully that's his next step, or because they seemingly had something for the North American title set up already. So that means the NXT championship scene is wide open. So, Tony D'Angelo and his family outnumbering outnumbering Braun Breaker could be pretty cool. Spoiler on the Braun Breaker. Of course he won. But we'll talk about that later. Tony D'Angelo was actually very good. I'm a fan of him. I know a lot of people are hating on him right now, but I don't. I like the character. The character came out of the shoot over, and it's seemingly still over. It just wasn't as over as Legado del Fantasma. And Legado del Fantasma has kind of been getting the short end of the stick. Again, ever since they teased the babyface run. But I don't know, man. I guess this is going to get them some sympathy. But I don't see how they get out of this. That's going to be the question. Like, I guess they're going to have to, create some kind of rebellion. Now it's, I don't know, man. It's more of them than it is of Tony D'Angelo and his crew. So I don't know. I guess we just have to wait and see, right? All right, so we did Alba Fire. She had a vignette where she once again explains where she comes from, what this Alba Fire thing actually is, by saying she's the descendant of the warrior women of Scotland, the leader of which was called the Firekeeper. And the Firekeeper was responsible for making sure that the home fire stayed burning while the other women went out and learned to live off the land. I was like, okay, they're giving us the lore now. It's like Lord of the Rings or something. So then she says that she's now the Firekeeper, and since coming to NXT, she's had to reignite the dormant fire within her. And I was like, okay, sure, this works, for people it works for. Then after this, we go to Lash Legend, who is talking shit about Alba Fire, about, she's going to make Alba Fire ancient history or something to that effect. And Tatum Paxley says, like, why don't you challenge her to a match if you got a problem with her? And Lash Legend was like, ugh, what? Then she says some shit about Lash Legend, the one and only, you can't clone me. And I was like, what is this? Like Mike Jones? Who Mike Jones? Who Mike Jones? The one and only, you can't clone me. I was like, oh, good God. Lash Legend is just bad. She's bad at promos. She's bad at wrestling. She's just bad. She's not. It'd be okay if she had a personality, but her personality is basically just ratchet broad that you've seen on Real Housewives of Hip Hop or some shit. It's like they took something out of VH1 and plucked it into NXT, and that's what it is now. I'm not surprised so many people like it because that show is very popular, and women being ratchet like that, over the top, egotistical, it's in the American culture now. It's been like 10 years of that show, of shows like that. I mean, there's like 100 knockoff shows, Black Ink, and my brother watches that kind of shit. It's like all women talking to cameras, clapping with extra long nails, and they have zero personality between them. They're all rappers or whatever, and you never heard a single song from them. And it's just all gossip and drama and stupidity. It's all Wendy Williams and other dumb shit. It's vapid and empty entertainment. It's completely, totally waste of time. And that's just what Lash Legend reminds me of. And I think that's a barrier to getting me to actually enjoy anything she does. Is it doesn't feel like it's natural to her. It feels like she's playing a character. And it feels like this is the character she's decided to play. And it's awful. It's absolutely awful. But Tatum Paxley is going to get beat up, which is her own problem. All right. Second match, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter, otherwise known as KC Squared. I'm going to call them that instead of... I was going to call them KC Squared. Versus Toxic Attraction for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Toxic Attraction won the match. This was a good match in terms of actual tag teams. You had tag teams doing tag team moves. This was a good thing about KC Squared, is that they actually had tandem moves, which was awesome. It reminded me of the old days of the Rock and Roll Express, except for, and just to take a little bit of an aside, I know a lot of people were gushing over the Rampage tag team match between the Lucha Brothers and the Young Bucks. And I remember they were like, oh, they're the greatest tag team of all time. And, it's just hyperbole in the wrestling media, and the fanboys are really hyping it. I just asked a simple question. It's almost like a Matt Walsh this thing. I just said, who was the last person to make a tag? And who is the legal man? Like, it's that simple. It's like when you you ask simple questions to people and you don't even get a response. I was like, yeah, great tag team match. Like, who was the last person to make a tag? Who's the legal man? Like, that's what a tag team match is. A tag team match isn't structured like a fatal four-way where everybody's in the match at one time. Like, I know that's the original tag team match. It's the Australian tag team match before it actually became tag teams. It was a tornado match, two on two, both guys in the ring at the same time. Tags actually evolved later. So I know that's, how it comes, but we all know tag team wrestling as a traditional one man outside the ring, one man inside the ring, you tag to trade spots. that's not what I see in tag team wrestling a lot these days. I just see a lot of people doing whatever they want, and the referee's just kind of standing there as if it ain't no rules, So it was actually nice to see people do tandem moves within 5 or 6 seconds to do a move and then actually go for a pinfall. It was actually refreshing, for Christ's sake. For crying out loud, it was refreshing. That being said, I did enjoy Wade Barrett on commentary, which, as usual. He says that KC Squared were a tag team. They've been a tag team for 2 years. And he says the first 12 months of KC Squared were filled with L's, which I thought was hilarious. But he gave them credit by saying that they was able to take that time to gel and get better. And that's their experience advantage is what they have over Toxic Attraction. So Toxic Attraction still managed to win the match. So what happens is, I believe it was Caden Carter got punched in the head and then a German suplex by Gigi Dolan. It was a kind of a sloppy German suplex. It was even sloppier bridge. Not only was Gigi Dolan's shoulders down, but fucking Caden Carter's shoulders weren't even down. Caden Carter's fine as fuck, though, bruh. I'm talking fine as fuck, bruh. Jesus. A girl fine. Anyway, they win with the German suplex with the bridge. Not a bad match. The finish was horribly botched, of course. I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully, KC Square is going to be going up to the main roster to become the women's tag team champions there. I think that would be a greater thing for them. They need, serious characters. I know they're doing the party thing now, and they're riding on the shoulders of men. I don't know who those guys were. I think they were twins, weren't they? I don't know. I mean, I'll stop asking questions. All I know is KC Squared is a good team. Unfortunately, they lost. I kind of saw that they were going to lose because I think Toxic Attraction is probably just going to be fed to a different team later on down the line. I don't know who, though. But I just kind of figured KC Squared wasn't going to win this match. But it was a fun match from top to bottom. It was pretty good. All right. I didn't like the finish. The finish was kind of whack. All right. So Pretty Deadly were in the mirror combing their hair and singing into the combs, which is absolutely hilarious, about how much they hate the Creed brothers. Now, we were not, they have yet to explain why Pretty Deadly hate the Creed brothers, or why they wrecked Diamond Mine's locker room, or why they were the guys attacking Diamond Mine, period. They didn't explain any of this. None of it matters, I guess. They just were the guys under the hood. I don't know what's going on. But it was a nice little contrast about how Pretty Deadly wasn't taking it seriously, and you see the Creed brothers working out. They're grappling with each other, doing the old wrestling back and forth. And you can see that the Creed brothers are taking this very seriously. So that brings us to the main event, where during the Creed brothers' entrance, we get a timeline of their life, of all of their successes and throughout their lives. And it was sort of a guess that they would become the tag team champions in June of 2022. So Pretty Deadly come out next, and they have the Blaze of Glory inspired John Morrison entrance with their hair blowing in the wind and the posing. If you've never seen Blaze of Glory, I believe it's Owen Wilson and Will Ferrell. I'm probably gonna try to Google it. I love Will Ferrell movies, by the way. He's one of those guys that no matter what he does, he's funny to me. So it's just great. But Blaze of Glory was about figure skating, and it was fantastic. It was actually hilarious. It was so stupid. That's the thing about comedies are, you can't take them serious. They stupid movies. So Blaze of Glory is a stupid ass movie, but it's a funny ass movie. And it is Will Ferrell, John Hader, Will Arnett, Amy Poehler. Who was the co-star? So Ben Stiller was one of the co-stars. I guess that's why, it kind of had a little bit of the Zoolander inspiration to it. But anyway, they're figure skaters and they're, very colorful and everything. Go watch it if you're into comedies. Blaze of Glory is actually pretty funny. So that's kind of what Pretty Deadly's entrance reminded me of. And Pretty Deadly are very good. They've been on NXT UK for a long time. They were basically under the rug at that point. And coming to NXT proper, their last days at NXT UK were very good when they were the tag team champions there. And then they came over to NXT proper and was given a big push. And they got over. Yes, boy. So they're fantastic. The Creed Brothers family was in attendance. And at that point, I kind of knew that the Creed Brothers were going to win. I knew it. You don't bring mama and put her front row and then beat the kids. You can't do it. It doesn't make sense. So this crowd was just volcanic for the Creed Brothers. That made this match, took this match to the next level. The pace was a little slow because the Creed Brothers are, traditional grapplers. So they didn't, they're not high flyers, even though they kind of do a little bit of that stuff. That's typically not what they do. They give you time to let things breathe. They give you a big move here and there. They use mostly power spots. They grapple a lot, and Pretty Deadly did a great job of selling and using their tag team moves and their greater experience and their craftiness to get and maintain advantages, which is, typical of what you would expect from these guys. And Pretty Deadly are very disarming with their antics and the whole yes boy and the hair combing and stuff. They still have, a mean streak. When they spine buster Julius on the stairs, that seemed like a pretty big spot. Like, I hate that it didn't lead to anything more, but it was a mean thing to do. And they showed that the Pretty Deadly do have times when they're very serious, So, but the hot tag to Brutus Creed, man, a tag team match lives and dies by the hot tag. The crowd went absolutely insane during the hot tag. And then Brutus even does the top rope cannonball again. The thing where he damn near broke his legs last time, he did it again. They wrestle a little bit more. Then Elton Prince slides the belt into the ring. Julius Creed ends up picking up the belt. And he had been blasted with the belt a couple of days prior on NXT. So this was an opportunity for him to get revenge. And it was just like slight temptation, a couple of seconds before he put the belt down. And went for, more moves to continue to fight. But the temptation was there. And it's, again, Pretty Deadly trying to be crafty and trying to get disqualified. And they were trying to cheat and ended up botching it. So the finish was phenomenal. You got Julius Creed goes up to the top rope, hits a shooting star press. Doesn't really even go for the pinfall. And then immediately goes for the basement lariat. Gets the pin. And not only do they get to stay in Diamond Mine, but now they've proven that shit. They don't even need Diamond Mine. The Creed Brothers win. This was awesome. This ruled. This kicked ass, man. Like, this was one hell of a tag team match. Now, this was an actual... On this show, there were actual tag team matches because, there were actual tag teams that did actual tag team wrestling, like, making tags. This match obviously was vastly superior to the Toxic Attraction match, but this was, really a showcase for the Creed Brothers. And I could tell that, people don't pay that much attention to one side of the match. They usually pay a lot of attention to the winners and, the winners, they're going somewhere. It's like, as I was watching this match, not only did I say that Pretty Deadly would be fantastic in the maximum male models with Max Dupree, but they will also be a success on the main roster because they're so grating and annoying. I can see them being the male version of the Iconics who eat up a lot of time just standing in the ring being goofy, and getting over with the yes boy and calling themselves snacks and being absolutely ridiculous. I think that we're going to create a monster when it comes to Pretty Deadly. And I think in the long term, Pretty Deadly are going to have longer legs in the tag team division than the Creed Brothers. Like, the Creed Brothers are phenomenal, but WWE doesn't care about tag teams. They've already shown that. But with Pretty Deadly, you could have the tag team version of the Miz. You know, like if these two guys can talk and they can, and they're not afraid to look silly and they're not, you know, they have a long shelf life as a tag team. I could just see them just coming out every week just to be as annoying as possible and having fun doing it. And everybody's going to have fun hating them. They're going to end up getting over big if they're given the opportunity on the main roster, because their characters aren't really defined by wins and losses. They aren't tough guys. So they can lose in 2 seconds, come back, yes boy, and do crazy stuff with their hair and everything, and it won't matter. You know, so it just seems to me like this from the way WWE books things, like these guys are going to make a lot of money on the main roster. I would get them on the main roster immediately. We don't need them in NXT anymore. You know, from what I've seen on NXT UK, they broke up Mustache Mountain. Mustache Mountain lost the tag team championships to the black guys. I swear to God, I don't know who they are. I think they're called the hottest tag team under the sun, and I can't remember who they are to save my life. I just really can't remember their names at all. But Mustache Mountain apparently is now broken up, and Trent Seven's going to turn heel. If they had not done that nonsense and break up Mustache Mountain, I would say bring Mustache Mountain over to the United States. Kick Pretty Deadly on over to the main roster. Let them make the money that they're going to end up making in the long term. Let them get started now. And then you just replace Pretty Deadly with another tag team from NXT UK. But it seems like we haven't decided to do that yet. You know, maybe Pretty Deadly's going to be around for a little while longer. But they certainly need to be moved to the main roster immediately while they're still very entertaining and their act hasn't run thin yet. You know, so I like Pretty Deadly, man. I'll fuck with them dudes the long way. I like them. All right. Match 3. Carmelo Hayes regains the NXT North American title in a match against Cameron Grimes. So this match was good, but it was also awkward. It was awkward because the crowd obviously has turned on Cameron Grimes. They were 100% in the camp of Carmelo Hayes. They have absolutely burned out on Cameron Grimes, and I'm thinking that character and this guy has run his course. And I think the whole thing with, I promised my daddy I was going to become a champion in NXT. I think that was it. You know, and that's what I mean by, and I talked about this in terms of Wardlow, is that sometimes when I call it the Virgil syndrome, right? It is that you create a character that has one good arc in them. One. And you have to find some way to get people interested in that character once that arc is over, right? Pro wrestling is a long form story. I'm talking months, years. You have to have a second gear, a second act, a second thing that you can do, a second storyline ready. For Virgil, they didn't have one. So Virgil's entire career is $1 Million Man's bodyguard / butler, $1 Million Man opponent, and that was it. He went from there to being a complete and total job guy. You know, and you have to have a second idea. When it comes to Cameron Grimes, when he was just the character Cameron Grimes and he was just like this goofball, he had a lot more legs because the character didn't really have too much of anything. So he was out there being a bumpkin 1 minute, then he was rich for a long time, and they turned him babyface, and then they tried to make him so sympathetic with the whole my dad died and all that kind of stuff, and that worked. But now you've achieved something, and we don't feel bad about booing you now because you actually achieved, you know, made your dad proud. Now it's like, fuck you, get out of the way. It's somebody else's turn. You know, that's typical of the hardcore fan base. Now they're kind of all on, you know, Carmelo Hayes is just a guy who was there, you know. But I was definitely disappointed in the lack of reaction for Cameron Grimes, especially since he's been on this roster for so long. He's been on this roster for like 2 years. And people just, the moment his music started, it was just kind of like, I was like, damn. You're not going to give him any reaction? You used to hear people go, to the moon in the crowd, and now you barely hear it. There's some people doing it to the moon, but not everybody. It used to be everybody. It's like, how could you lose so much momentum by winning matches. Like, this is the crazy thing. And, you know, when you're dealing with people, it's like, it's not like Cameron Grimes lost a lot and then people lost faith in him. It's like he won too much and people lost faith in him. I was like, that's insane. It's insane, truly insane. Anyway, Cameron Grimes not being over. You know, they still got this match over, though, because he's still a really good wrestler. The problem that I had with this match was the waiting for spots. The obvious setups where, you know, and Carmelo Hayes he's not a rookie. You know, he's been around for a while. But he's got a habit of doing what you see in AEW a lot, which is looking over his shoulder to see where his opponent is. You know, do you remember the spot? Like the one time they did the flip off the middle rope. He jumped up there and then he waited. He just stood there and he looked over his shoulder, and then that's when Cameron Grimes jumped up there. And I was just kind of like, And then there was that spot where, you know, he was supposed to he was trying to do a moonsault or something like that, as Cameron Grimes was leaned on the second rope and he bounced off and Cameron Grimes set up. It's like he didn't even try to do a moonsault to land on his stomach or anything. He just kind of, it was like a spot. So he went through the spot. And they did that a few times in this match where he got caught looking over his shoulder or taking his time to set up a spot or something like that. And it's like that kind of breaks up the flow of the match when you're obviously looking for spots. It's about as bad as calling spots or motioning for people for spots. It's just as bad. You know, it looks clunky. It looks out of place. If you're going to do a spot, it should look natural, right? So I didn't feel that. I didn't like that part of the match, but I did like the match overall. And I think it was fun. You know, Carmelo Hayes' gear made him look like a star. It was the right decision to put the belt back on him. Now he's going to be the guy that's going to end up fighting Solo Sikoa in the future. That's fine. Cameron Grimes' time at NXT has got to be over. It's got to be over. You know, he's got to be getting ready for a call-up. Because he's been in NXT since 2019, 2018. It's been 3 years now, hasn't it? You know, and he, of course, spent a lot of time in TNA. So the guy has some seasoning. So I don't know. Like, I don't know what his prospects could be in the future for, you know, main roster stuff. Because it's very difficult to say, considering, you know, guys like him, he's a smaller guy. He's a personality guy. He's a gimmick. It's hard to tell where that's going to go. He might just be one of those Drew Gulak guys who hang around on the main roster for a little while, but never get taken seriously and never make it anywhere. You know, it may just be a comedy guy. You know, that's unfortunate, but, you know, that's what it's looking like. But he got to get the hell out of NXT at some point, right? And I think it's about time for Cameron Grimes to move on. You know, I think the crowd is tired of him. I think he's done everything that he can do believably in NXT. You know, maybe have him challenge for the NXT title, lose, and then go on. You know, get out of there. Which I think is probably important. You know, sometimes it's important to just move characters on. All right. Joe Gacy was backstage, says that we've studied his every move, he being, of course, Braun Breaker. And that Braun is now seconds away from losing the NXT title. And that he being Gacy, has torn down nostalgia. Now he's going to tear down the present and become a beacon of change. Then he cackled, and I laughed too, because it's really ridiculous what they're doing with Joe Gacy. And as we go into the main event, Joe Gacy versus Braun Breaker, I was a little aghast at how much time they were going to spend together. I was like, man, this is probably going to be the worst match on the show. So they more than likely need to get this thing done fast. I was wrong. You know, I don't think this was the worst match on the show. I think this match was actually better than it should have been, and mostly because of Joe Gacy. So Braun was wearing tights similar to his uncle Scott from WrestleMania 9. Joe Gacy comes out. He's dressed like a dungeon master from D&D. He got a cloak on. I'm like, oh, nobody should ever wear a cloak or a cape or anything of that sort. You're not a superhero. Don't put that on. Everything about this match was about Joe Gacy not really believing that he could pin Braun Breaker, but still trying. he was still trying to pin Braun Breaker, so he wasn't like completely leaning into the disqualification angle. He also tried to hit some big moves and do some stuff. Of course, he also in this match went full Bray Wyatt, doing way too much character stuff, like, standing on his head on the turnbuckles and, the crazy eyes, the creepiness. They just decided, hey, did you watch enough Bray Wyatt to be able to mimic his stuff? Please do that. It's like Bray Wyatt had been gone long enough for you to steal his gimmick. At least let him be gone for a couple of years before you start stealing his gimmick. Like, shit, you ain't been gone that long. You've been gone less than a year. So, let the guy, let the late great veteran live. Anyway, I was surprised to hear a dueling chant for Gacy because I thought the crowd hated Gacy. I really did. Especially considering he wasn't over before. And it's like during this match, it's like he got over. Which I said before about Pretty Deadly, is that sometimes people pay too much attention to the guys who win, and they only pay enough attention to the guys who lose. And Gacy looked good in this match in losing. He did a great job of taunting and offering temptations to Braun. His Druids handled Braun a chair, just randomly gave him a chair. And Braun was tempted to actually use it, but then of course didn't. Gacy shoved Braun in the chair into the ring post. That was a pretty good spot, by the way. Braun Breaker was jumping all over the place in this match too. He did like a flying helo, and I was like, "Wait a minute, it's totally not necessary for him to do that." Like, sure, it's great for a big dude to be able to jump over the top rope, but it's probably not the best idea. The best crowd reaction of the night came from Joe Gacy pulling in Eddie Guerrero. The Druid hands a chair to Gacy. Gacy tosses the chair to Braun and then flops. The first referee sees this thing, is about to throw it out and says, "Braun, I'm sorry, Braun, but I gotta throw it out." And as he's about to throw it out, the second referee slides in the ring, grabs his arm, and is like, "No, nothing happened. And they actually let the match go on. And I was like, the nerve of these guys, like, when did they start doing this? So it was at that point that Joe Gacy kind of gave up the concept of trying to get Braun disqualified. Gacy took a great spear from Braun. It was well delivered, but it was also very well sold by Gacy. Gacy also took a hellacious tumble through the announce table. That was nothing for Gacy, who was a deathmatch wrestler in a past life. So it didn't bother him any to take a bump like that through the announce table. He took some really good bumps in this match. It's got to give the boy credit. He took some good bumps. The Druids got hit with a chair. One got knocked into the other one. Then we got the Gorilla Press Slam, the return of that joint. 1, 2, 3. Braun Breaker wins. Joe Gacy and his Druids, not only are they not revealed, but now they are beaten and Joe Gacy is done. And you know what? I don't think this was a pay-per-view main event match. To me, this is a TV main event. I still would have gone with somebody who was more over in the main event, but it was good. I don't think it was great, but I do think it was good, and I think their performances were great. But I think some of the story elements was really good too. I really liked the Guerrero spot and the spot with the chairs and stuff like that. But at the same time, I still think the match was too long in terms of they had a little too much time. Like, they give matches time to breathe, but I think this match maybe had about 20 minutes. And I was like, I don't know. So that made it a little slow in spots, as, Braun had to fight from underneath. But it wasn't a bad match by any stretch of the imagination. And Joe Gacy did a great job of making Braun Breaker look good and making Braun look tough. And Braun did a great job of showing his intensity and being able to overpower a not small man like Joe Gacy. Like, Joe Gacy wrestled a lot smaller than he really was. And I could see him. He has this look like Kevin Owens, but he seems to have the mind of a Bray Wyatt or Mick Foley. And that could take him places if he's given the opportunity. And to a degree, I think he might be hamstrung by the character, and that the character has been shoved one way or the other, especially due to politics, and now we've got a supernatural bent to the character, and it was like, okay, we didn't really need that. Like, the political stuff would have been fine, but it seemed like they tried to cover it up with the supernatural stuff, and we lost the plot somewhere in here. So I would like for Joe Gacy to kind of turn back the supernatural elements of the character, kind of go back to being a political windbag, or go in a different direction. But I think he's main roster ready too. I think he's a guy who's definitely ready for the main roster. His verbal skills are better than they used to be. Again, he likes taking bumps. He's a sizable guy, not huge, but he's got the indie rep, having wrestled in death matches for a long time. And I think he's over the age of 30. So he's seasoned enough, and I think he's done enough in NXT right now to show that he can do character work if given the opportunity. But I don't see where else can we go with Joe Gacy. I'm not seeing anywhere else the character can go. And of course, he was hamstrung by, his number one guy, Harland, being pulled away from him right before his big push. So they didn't do him any favors. So I think we should really pull Gacy up to the main roster. I don't see why not. I'm sure that there's something for him to do. And Braun Breaker continues to be the man, which is the right thing to do going forward. I just think the match was a little too long. All right. Did you see the music video for MVP's diss record on Lashley? I have to tell you, bruh. I heard the song before I saw the video, because the song popped up on the WWE Themes YouTube account, and I was cracking up at that joint, man. He wrote a diss record on Lashley a day before their big match at Hell in a Cell. It was very entertaining. MVP is doing a lot. I actually like that. Tiffany Stratton and Roxanne Perez, they cut promos on each other before the breakout tournament final. Tiffany Stratton absolutely burned Roxanne by saying that this is a women's breakout tournament and it's not for little girls. And then it was like, don't you have a bus to catch? And then Roxanne Perez gave us the old white meat baby face. Well, maybe this tournament is normal for people like you, but for somebody like me, I'm never going to drop this is my opportunity to become the women's champion, or some bland shit that anybody could have said. But she got absolutely cooked with that whole, don't you have a bus to catch? And Tiffany Stratton not paying her any attention, basically twirling her hair as she talked. I was like, I like this. She's kind of got that nonchalant, bratty attitude, and I love it. This is good. Roxanne Perez is going to end up being the women's champion, but I like Tiffany Stratton. I really am enjoying her work. It's a little campy, obviously, because she's not an actress. She hasn't found it to be that perfect yet. But I think that if you put Tiffany Stratton with like a Carmella, God, they could be awful together. I'm talking like a mentor mentee type of situation. Ooh, they could really get on somebody's nerves. And, that's something WWE probably would do. All right, so match 4, the final match that I got to talk about for this evening. Wendy Chu versus Mandy Rose for the NXT Women's Championship. Tag teams. All right, so we get a dream sequence for Wendy, which features all of her pranks and a dream of her in her pajamas as the NXT Women's Champion. She then wakes up in a reality where she's about to fight for the belt. She's got her body pillow. She's got her, I think, a little coffee, but she's not in her pajamas. She's wearing a jumpsuit and she's wearing a fanny pack. And I was like, what is this? They decided to drop the gimmick, but she had the same theme music. She still had the sleeping mask on and everything, but they decided she was going to dress up for the occasion. So they put her in a jumpsuit. Mandy Rose comes out there and she's perfectly bronzed. Her things are thanging respectfully. It's all over the place. Wade Barrett is thumping hard, saying that Mandy Rose is the reason why there was even a women's breakout tournament, and she went to management and talked them into it. And I was just kind of like, oh boy. This match was okay, also weird in a lot of spots because of Wendy Chu and the style. For starters, it's hard to get people. I think this match had the least amount of crowd interest. They got there. They ended up getting the match over. But I think we had a main problem of people believing in Wendy Chu. I don't think anybody believed in her. I think people liked her, but they didn't buy her in the role of being the women's champion. So, whatever. Mandy Rose continues to show how she's improved. The spine buster on the floor looked brutal. Her spine buster just looked brutal, period, because she has almost no upper body strength. So it's basically you jumping into her arms and then her pulling your legs. And that's pretty much it. And you slam yourself into the floor. Because despite how great Mandy looks, she doesn't really look like she has any upper body strength whatsoever. Wendy Chu fired up at one point and tried to get out of her jumpsuit top. And it took literally forever. I was like, what is going on? She can't get out of this thing. She was trying to pull it down, I guess. And she just had a hard time getting her arms out of that thing. It's like she was in a straitjacket. I'm like, what's going on? So then she puts Mandy Rose in a sleeper hold or of some sort. She's got her legs wrapped around Mandy from behind. And she's trying to tie her up with the arm of the sweatshirt or the jumpsuit. And that's not working. And then she tries rolling her up. That didn't work. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And then she went into the sleeper hold spot. And I was like, Wendy's a little chubby too. She's a little chubs. So the finish comes with Mandy Rose yanking Wendy Chu off the top rope. Wendy Chu went a little bit of a distance, fell down. And when she got up, there was a running knee strike or the running kick, however that went. And Mandy Rose won the match clean without the need for toxic attraction. And I was like, oh, okay, sweet. A solid win for Mandy Rose. I think this was probably the weakest match of the night, likely due to people not really believing in Wendy Chu and there being a lot of botched spots in the match. Like, Mandy Rose has improved, but saying that Mandy Rose has improved doesn't mean that she's all of a sudden turned into one of the best women's wrestlers in the world. It doesn't mean she's just not awful like she used to be. And she wasn't really all that bad before. She's just significantly better than she used to be. And I think she's more comfortable in the ring. But for Christ's sake, she's no Charlotte. She's no Serena Deeb. All right? You have to put her in the ring with people who are better than she is. And I think if you put Mandy Rose in the ring with people who are better than she is, she could really be something. In NXT, she's wrestling people that is who are good, but maybe still in some way inexperienced in how to work certain kinds of matches. And I think she's kind of has a little bit more experience. She's been in WWE for a long time than Mandy Rose. She's been there for 6 years now. Wasn't she there in 2016, 2017? She's been there for a long time. So she's got a handle on the personality portion. She just needed help in the ring. And now she's gotten that. So she seems to be a little bit more comfortable in her role. Now she's ready to go against people who are better than she is. And I know that some of these people, and I think Roxanne Perez is probably better than Mandy Rose in the ring. But Roxanne Perez has the personality of a paper plate. She just doesn't have it. And, NXT women's division is full of trainees. Io Shirai is injured, so she's not going to be around. I guess Alba Fire is still there. Maybe she could be the one that takes the belt from Mandy. But I think Mandy needs to go back to the main roster, Now, that being said, I'm not so sure how they would take Toxic Attraction on the main roster, considering the sex appeal of the character. I would really question whether they would actually bring that to SmackDown at least. Maybe to Raw, because it's on cable television. But SmackDown, with her titties out all the time, and, those revealing costumes that Gigi and JC be wearing, I don't know if they let them get away with that. I would hope so. I would hope they would let them, push the boundaries a little bit. But something tells me if they get called up to the main roster, they're going to be wearing cat suits or a lot more clothes than they used to wear. And it's not going to kill the gimmick, but It's not going to be as pure as it is at NXT. So maybe we ought to enjoy the Mandy Rose and NXT days, especially from a visual standpoint. But this match was okay. It wasn't awful, but it was the weakest match on the show. I think overall the show did very well. It probably exceeded my expectations, especially with the crowd reaction. That was hot for everything. Even Wendy Chu got her match over eventually. Even Joe Gacy. And I think they were the weakest two matches on the show because the opponents were, even though Wendy Chu was over, nobody believed her in that role. And Gacy just was not over in that role. It seemed forced with him. And they hadn't done a good job of really presenting Joe Gacy correctly or as a, legitimate threat. So that was a booking decision, not a Joe Gacy decision. So, but overall, I think that the Creed brothers did excellent. Legado del Fantasma versus Tony D'Angelo's family, both of those matches were fantastic and more than carried the rest of the show. Carmelo Hayes and Cameron Grimes was a great singles match, even though I think there was some oddities in it, with the whole waiting for spots to occur. But overall, I think the show was really good. Let me know what you guys think. Comment section. Like, share, and subscribe. Talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.